If I had $1 and I could only put $1 into one of the two startups, I'd probably bet on the FAANG. I was a FAANG-level recruiter. I predominantly recruited for the last decade of the hottest technology companies in the world. And I thought it'd be fun to recruit for AI startup. AI startups are working very hard. The reason they're working very hard is because AI is believed to be, by these startups, a completely transformational technology, completely transformational opportunity. So when AI startup looks at FAANG talent, they say, do I want this 9-to-5 mentality to kind of infect my startup? I don't think so. A FAANG engineer adapting their expertise to an AI startup can actually be hugely valuable to an AI startup. And these are the conversations that I'm trying to have. Favorite quote from a great movie, Almost Famous: I didn't invent the rainy day, right? I'm just trying to, carry the best umbrella. Overall kind of purpose and thesis of this is how a FAANG, what is the perception of a FAANG engineer from the lens of the AI startup world, and how can a FAANG engineer adapt themselves into the world of AI? What motivated me to share on this topic is, I primarily work with early startups, and the bulk of the early startups that we work with are building something in AI. And the talent that I interact with for these opportunities, it's either engineers who are already experienced in early startups and have already had some exposure to AI, and those are pretty seamless, interactions. They have experienced what AI startups are like, and they know what to expect. And again, it's pretty straightforward. Then the other segment of talent that I interact with are engineers that are working for FAANG companies and FAANG equivalent companies, so Meta or Google or Amazon, and the whole kind of world of technology companies that dominated the technology sector before AI came onto the scene, even Instacart and Stripe and Robinhood, et cetera. And those engineers have a very different perception of what it's like to work in AI. And AI founders and AI startups that I work with have a very different perception of FAANG engineers than what FAANG engineers have of themselves. And so I wanted to spend this time just sharing on what AI startups look for, how they think about FAANG talent, and what FAANG talent can do if they're interested in getting into this game. Startups seem to be landing on this bias against FAANG talent, and it seems to be for three prominent reasons. It seems to be around technical capability. So what can the engineer actually be expected to do? Number two is cultural expectations, right? From what culture is the engineer coming from, and how does that overlay with the culture that AI startups are breeding in order to build what they're respectively building? And then the third one is around expectations. So what are the expectations of a FAANG engineer, and what they want to do and how they want to go about their day-to-day, as compared to the expectations of an AI startup with regards to what they're expecting to build. That's actually, that last one is, I'll pull on that one for a second, because that's a big reason why I published the podcast, is in order to kind of bring to light much of what we see in the early startup world. When I came into this world, I was a FAANG-level recruiter. I'll call myself that. I was a FAANG-level recruiter. I predominantly recruited for the last decade of the hottest technology companies in the world. Robinhood acquired our 80-person recruiting team. At that time, we were recruiting for Instacart and Stripe and Square and Roblox, and literally most of the technology companies that people have heard of out there, we've had time recruiting. We were early recruiting inside of Pinterest. We were early inside of Reddit. We were early inside of Ripple. We were early inside of Airbnb. So we were literally inside of the main technology companies of the last decade. And I thought it'd be fun to recruit for AI startup. And my sense going into recruiting for AI startups is that playbook would apply. But I was completely wrong. Some things apply, and some things are true in recruiting. But AI startups are just a completely different breed. They are a new generation of startup. They're a new generation of founders. Even the founders that were founders from the last decade have adapted to building in AI. And the gap between the way AI startups are building and how FAANG engineers are adapting is wide. It's wide. It's as wide as the Grand Canyon. And AI startups are evolving faster than FAANG engineers even have a clue of what's happening. I mean, it's just insane, the difference. It used to be, so Google employs, tens of thousands, maybe even over hundreds of thousands of engineers. Amazon employs tens of thousands of engineers. So there's just this massive corpus of talent that works at these companies. And these companies have natural attrition rates, let's say 10% a year, 20% a year. So that's tens of thousands of engineers that are moving out of these companies. And so that has created a quote unquote supply of talent for other growing technology companies, right? And so I thought, and one would think that, okay, you start to work with a startup and they need to hire some engineers. And okay, very natural to go to these destination places that are, known for having a high quality bar, known for having a tough vetting process, known for having good talent. So you go to these places, pull some good engineering talent, then you show them to the AI startup. So, someone who graduated from a good university and, spent some period of time at a FAANG company. And what these AI startups are doing today is they're kind of poo-pooing on it. They're saying, we're not interested in this talent because, we just don't think that they'll be successful here. And there are a couple of reasons for that. So one, AI startups today, these days, are grinding super hard. Like they're working 60-hour weeks, 70-hour weeks. There's a prominent culture out there referred to as 996. I'm not a big fan of that, but that's when you work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. The reason they're working very hard is because AI is believed to be, by these startups, a completely transformational technology, completely transformational opportunity. And they feel like there's nothing better for them to do than to continue building, because this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to build. And so contrast that with FAANG talent, which is perceived to be much more of a 9 to 5, much more of a lifestyle gig, much more casual in nature. There are memes about how little FAANG engineers are actually working from a hours per day or hours per week perspective. I'm not saying that's all. There are many very, very hardworking FAANG engineers, but that's one big difference, right? So when an AI startup looks at FAANG talent, they say, "Do I want this 9 to 5 mentality to kind of infect my startup?" I don't think so. I'd rather go with the grind right now. So that's one big difference. Another big difference is, so AI startups have to build everything from scratch. All startups have to build everything from scratch. They don't have existing systems. They don't have existing infrastructure. They don't have departments that do this, departments that do that. It's a small team. It's 3 people. It's 5 people building everything, an entire product end to end. At a FAANG company, it's very rare to find an engineer who's worked as part of a small team and built a product end to end. That's referred to as a 0 to 1 experience. They started at 0 and they got it to a state of 1, a state of something exists. Most FAANG engineers work as part of large teams, 10-person teams, 15, even a small team is like a 10, 12-person nimble team that had to, build something. And even in that example, they used very advanced and mature infrastructure, tooling. Just think about everything that Meta or Google or Amazon already has in place for these engineers to build off of. So none of that exists at an AI startup, right? And so the question then comes to the AI startup is, can this person who's been used to all of this infrastructure and all of this support and all of these, team members come here and build without that? Maybe they can, maybe many can, but that's a bias and that's a concern. Another area of concern is around, so AI startups are building in AI and they're very bleeding edge about it, right? They know exactly what the latest models do. They know the difference between the last model and this model. They know the difference between what competitive models could do. They know all the different tooling. They know what, agentic capabilities are, what the boundaries of those are. they know. I'll give you one specific example. There's a tool out there, it's an open source product called LangChain. LangChain is used to build agentic capabilities in AI. And it's a common part of a agentic workflow. Now, we're working with an AI startup who said we're building agentic capabilities that are so advanced that even LangChain can't, handle it. And in fact, it's a good signal for us. So when you talk to engineers, I want you to ask them what they have used to build agentic capabilities into the AI products that they've built. And if they mention LangChain, they're probably not for us because we know the limitations of LangChain and we know what it takes to build advanced capabilities that LangChain is not capable of building. So think about that mindset from the lens of an AI startup who's been immersed in it, who thinks it's the future, who's grinding to build their product, and have been doing so since the Chat GPT moment, which is now already almost 3 years old. And then they're evaluating a candidate for a job at their company who says, "Yeah, maybe AI will be big, maybe." And so the impression of AI startups of FAANG talent is that, unless they see something different from a resume, unless they see that the person has specific projects that they're working on. I'll give you an example. There's a FAANG engineer, really talented engineer, who I worked with, and if I just looked at his resume, then the resume would not have met the met the criteria for what the startup was hiring for. But this person was working on a specific project, and it's a side project. It didn't have anything to do with their place of employment. It was just a passion project, and the project actually overlaid pretty perfectly with what the startup was doing. And this person just decided to take on that project and work on that project on the side because that was what they were most passionate about. And the startup identified that. They said, "We like that." They leaned into it. They figured out that the person was a solid enough engineer. That passion project gave them the confidence that this person would be able to kind of immerse themselves into their respective culture and be a strong contributor. All that ended up working out through the interview process, and then they hired them. So those are just a couple of examples of what I see as bias. But what's interesting is, again, before this AI trend, FAANG engineers were in vogue. FAANG engineers were who startups wanted to hire because they did have a reputation for being high quality, having gone through rigorous vetting processes, having sound engineering fundamentals, and able to bring great capability to the table. But in this case, it's pretty consistent across the board. It's almost as if like the startups have gotten together and just have agreed to this, because I hear it from most startups that I work with, and startups that don't know each other, startups that don't share investors, startups that couldn't in any way have kind of colluded on this. It's just a kind of becoming a prominent view. That's what I'm seeing, and I see that again across those three main areas: the actual engineering capabilities, the FAANG engineers' capabilities to be able to deliver. Let's say, forget about all these biases. Say just kind of drop a FAANG engineer into an AI startup. Like, what could they do on a day-to-day basis that will move the needle for the AI startup? That's kind of problem number one. Problem number two is around culture, right? So FAANG engineer drops in on a Monday morning to the AI startup, and how quickly could they, adapt and immerse themselves and, kind of feel as one with the AI team. And then the third one is around expectations, because I think, FAANG engineers right now, I mean, I think everyone knows, are very well kept. They're very well paid. It's a great lifestyle gig. Many FAANG engineers that I talk to speak very openly about that. They're like, "I don't know if I want to leave here. I'm able to take afternoons off and go, watch my kids play soccer. And, the demands aren't that high. And I'm paid really well. And just, I don't have much of a commute, or if at all. And so it just kind of works really well." And so imagine coming from that kind of well-kept environment into an environment where your hair is on fire every day. You're working 60, 70 hours a week. There is no tooling around you. It's hyper competitive, right? I mean, so like, why would someone do that? And so from an AI startup lens, it's how could you be doing anything but this, right? Because AI is the future. Imagine being an engineer at HP, let's call it, back in 1993, And then 1995, imagine you're an engineer at HP. I don't even know when HP was. It came out in the 70s, but let's say you're an engineer at HP in 1994, and then you're well kept, you're paid well, you're building the future of the world. And then Mark Andreessen shows up on the scene, right? This, young hotshot guy coming into Silicon Valley, and he said, we're gonna build the future. The internet's the future. And you, Mrs. HP engineer, saying, I don't know, I'm pretty well kept over here. I mean, I don't see, this needing to be disrupted. And Mark says, you are out of your mind because you're going to be a dinosaur and we're building the future here. And that's the difference. And that's today. And so we're actually 3 years past that point of that example that I shared. 3 years ago, right, Sam Altman, when he was building the early version of OpenAI and ChatGPT, was trying to convince engineers to move away from FAANG and Meta and all those places to, create the ChatGPT moment. We're now 3 years from then. So now it's 1998, let's call it, right? We're 3 years into the internet, and you still have FAANG engineers saying, I'm not sure about this thing. I'm just not sure. It feels like maybe we'll adapt. Well, I mean, how well did HP adapt, right? Compared to the growth that was experienced through Google and through Yahoo and through Amazon and through these FAANGs that were startups at the time, right? Where is HP today? I haven't checked in a decade, right? And so where will FAANG be in a decade? It's unclear. Maybe they'll evolve, right? Maybe they'll keep pace. Maybe AI will become ubiquitous. Maybe every engineer will adopt AI in some shape or form, and it'll all just kind of be good like that. Or maybe we are at the beginning of this mega technological trend. Maybe AI is the future. Maybe those engineers that work for FAANG right now will be the equivalent of the engineer that worked for HP back in 1994. And so there is a class of engineer at FAANG that here's what I'm saying, and that's reaching out to me, and we're having very open conversations about how they could adapt their expertise, preparedness, whatever, in order to immerse themselves into the AI startup world, get off the FAANG bus, get into the AI startup bus, and be a part of the future. And I say AI startup loosely. We primarily work with earlier stage startups, seed A, B startups. The meccas of the AI universe are the large AI labs. And so, whereas FAANG used to be the kind of great destination for the engineer. And again, when I say FAANG, I mean like FAANG and equivalents. I want to continue to remind the listeners that I'm also including Stripe and Robinhood and Square and Instacart and all those kind of Airbnb and Pinterest and all those companies that were the hot growth companies of the last decade. That's all. I'm referring to all of those when I say FAANG and equivalent. So the kings and queens, the leaders of this AI world are the big AI labs, and you see it everywhere in the news, right? So OpenAI, Anthropic, Meta's superintelligence labs. There's like a very specific team inside of mega Meta, right? Google's DeepMind, very specific team. And there's a number of other startups, Cursor, and many other startups that are doing very well in the AI landscape. And so any of those companies are the companies that you want to, align yourself with if you want to be a part of this wave of the future, and if you believe what I'm saying. And again, the gap is continuing to widen between those two worlds. And I want to make sure that our listeners here don't take this the wrong way. FAANG talent is, for the most part, incredible. FAANG engineers are incredibly talented. They're incredibly well versed. They tend to, and I'll just share kind of what is a perception of the market, right? Very strong foundational engineering capabilities, very strong at building mass scale products, and there's nothing in the world that operates at a larger scale than FAANG, right? I mean, who else serves billions of people besides FAANG? And so the engineers that are building FAANG products for billions of people, is incredibly compelling, and they have been known to, and they do have the of the highest talent bars in the world. Engineers that work for FAANG have experience building at that level, and that's actually something that's very interesting. Is while AI startups have this bias of FAANG talent, they all want to be FAANG, so they all want to grow up to be that. And so a FAANG engineer adapting their expertise to an AI startup can actually be hugely valuable to an AI startup. And these are the conversations that I'm trying to have with our AI startup community is around, look, I know you want the grinder that has built all these AI side projects and has this kind of great cutting edge intuition, but you also are going to need, maybe that's just today while you're a seed company and while you need to get your product kind of from 0 to 1, but you're going to need to build sustainability into your product. You're going to need to build scale into your product. You're going to need to build reliability into your product. You're going to need to build your product for, maybe right now you have like 10 users or 50 users or 1,000 users, whatever kind of small number you have as your startup, but you're going to have tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands, and you're going to have millions of users, and you need to build your product to be able to work for customers at that and for operating at that level. I was talking to a startup literally just yesterday, and we were talking, should we overly optimize for a specific language or skill set today? And let's say my example around LangChain, should we overly optimize for a specific AI capability right now, or should we optimize for strong fundamental engineering capability? And I said, always go for the latter. Don't optimize for the language of the day or the technology of the day, because that's going to change in 2 years and in 3 years. And so if I looked at two startups, and one startup has a bunch of, let's call them no-name AI grinders, and then the other startup has is flush with FAANG talent, I'll actually think that the FAANG talent has some meaningful advantage. So I'll just share the two advantages because maybe we'll contrast that. Two startups, two different talent prototypes. The AI grinders, you could feel they're gonna probably work harder. They're going to kind of hustle their way to whatever it is that's the latest and greatest in AI. They might not have the sustainability. They might not have the maturity. They might not have the staying power to build a product into the what it takes to grow a product along the maturity spectrum to mass scale. The FAANG engineering team, maybe they're not going to grind as hard. They're for sure not going to work weekends. They'll likely not work weekends. They will. They may not be as attuned to the latest and greatest AI technology, but when they make their design decisions, when they make their development decisions, they're going to be much more sound. There's going to be a lot less problems that they'll experience with regards to product cleanliness, engineering, quality. It would be interesting to see two teams building the exact same product and how they would compete against each other over time. I'd probably bet on the FAANG startup, to be honest with you. Just if I had $1 and I could only put $1 into one of the two startups, I'd probably bet on the FAANG startup. That's what I would do, and it's for some of the reasons that I mentioned. And so, it is an interesting time in the market. And again, because I came from where I came from, I've seen what it takes for startups to be successful. I see much of how AI startups are approaching their building. And look, favorite quote from a great movie, Almost Famous: "I didn't invent the rainy day, right? I'm just trying to carry the best umbrella, right?" And so I didn't invent the market that we're in right now. I'm just trying to be successful within it and communicate out to the community what's all happening, so people could be equally successful and effective in it. If you're an AI startup listening to this, hopefully you've opened up your mind to the benefits of FAANG talent, because there is incredible talent at FAANG, and with the right mindset shifts, they could be incredible value adds to your company. So kind of chill out on the bias a little bit. There's some incredible talent in there. Make your interview process a little bit more skills-based rather than overly biasing based on the resume. Run these people through your process, see how they do. If they do well, hire them. If they don't do well, don't hire them, but kind of chill out a little bit on, this person's probably this way or this person's probably that way, right? So that's my advice for AI startups. If you're a FAANG engineer, you're listening to all this, you're like, 1, I'm screwed. 2, this guy's full of crap. Or 3, I gotta do something, and I'm not doing it anywhere near as fast as I need to do it, right? And so if you're in one or two, all good. Drop me a comment. Love to have a follow-up conversation with you. But if you're in three, then the best way to think about your world, or if you're even, if three is even a remote possibility to you, think about that analogy that I shared between HP and the internet, right? So if you're working for HP and the internet's on the scene, like how long are you going to go at HP before you're like, all right, I got to get out of here. And then at some point that train is going to be gone, right? So just go look at FAANG companies, go look at Meta, go look at all the companies that I said are in the FAANG world, and look at how many engineers out of HP they employ. My guess is that number is very close to zero, unless it's something very specific and unique and niche. And I'm going to get a bunch of HP people pissed at me right now, but my guess is that's going to be very close to zero, right? So, what's at stake here? I think the stake is your ability to earn a living in the future, I think, is what's at stake. Because, maybe you could, stay employed at these companies for as long as, they'll employ you. But, if something happens, and you're not employed there anymore, go try to get a job. Just go try to do that. And you'll very quickly see how not relevant you are to the world of what's being built today, which sucks. And I'm sorry to have to say that, but that is the brutal truth. And so what can you do, right? So number one is you have to shift your mindset. You can't just say, oh, well, that's where it's hot, so I guess I have to go study up and, it feels like a chore to you. No, that's not gonna work. That's not gonna work. You have to kind of believe that AI is the future. Which, look, it's not like a soundbite anymore. There are multi-billion, OpenAI is about to raise at $500 billion. Like, it's one of the most valuable companies in the world. Like, we are very, very far away from like this being a conspiracy theory, right? Like, okay, so you have to kind of believe that AI is the future, and you have to decide, do I want to be part of the future or do I want to be part of the past? You have to just kind of decide that, right? And then that's number one. If you decide that you want to be a part of the future, then you kind of have to realize that you're already behind. You just have to do that, right? How did OpenAI get from 0 to 500 billion under your nose, right? Like while you're, contemplating things, right? Like $500 billion in value was created just like that, right? And so how much more value is going to need to be created from the AI ecosystem before you decide that AI is where you want to be? So let's say you can kind of gate yourself there, and now you're like, okay, AI is the future. What do I do now? So you have to, like I said, immerse yourself into the world of AI startups. Like, quit your job if you can afford to, and go move to San Francisco. Go make a commitment to go to San Francisco 5 days a week. Go to hackathons, participate in projects, go to events. Like, listen to how these AI engineers and AI startups talk about what they're building. Pattern match, parrot it, start to at minimum, sound like you know what you're talking about. At maximum, start to actually understand what you're talking about, right? Build a project. That's very, very important. You have to show an ability to build 0 to 1, from nothing exists, a blank computer screen, to a product exists, right? And so pick something you're passionate about and take all of your engineering capability, whatever it is that you learn how to build at FAANG, and go apply it to building this thing. That is now your new resume, because that's what you're going to do at an AI startup. You're going to have to build something that doesn't exist. You have to go from 0 to 1. You're going to have to build something that doesn't exist. So at FAANG, there's no example of that, because you can't say, I built Instagram. That's not true. 10,000 engineers built Instagram, right? So what then did you build? No, that's not going to work. So you have to start a project. You have to be able to put your engineering capability into that. It has to show well. People are looking at project examples as a way to evaluate talent. And then, that's what you have to do, right? That's what you have to do. And then go do that, and you'll find an AI startup that will, like you, and then hire you, and then you'll be immersed in the startup world. That's about as straightforward as it is. This idea just came to me, and engineers, and I'll even say the broader talent pool, don't do this often enough. when companies are evaluating talent, they want to know, how can you help them achieve whatever it is that they need to do? And they use the interview process to figure that out. And the interview process is, it's not great. I mean, interview processes in generally aren't great ways. Most companies, they design an interview process, then the talent comes in, and then, maybe the person does well, maybe the person doesn't do well. Interviews aren't great. While most talent spends their time trying to figure out how to get jobs, not enough talent spends their time showing their potential employers or the world what they could actually do for them, which is kind of maybe a, interesting thought, right? So your resume isn't showing anybody what you could do for them. Your resume is showing the world what you did in the past, right? So imagine there's an AI startup, and an AI startup is building ABC. And because you're a smart person, that the next thing they're going to need to build is whatever it is that they're going to have to build next. So go try to build that, right? Maybe that's your personal project. Maybe your personal project is building some sort of a advanced feature or some sort of an advanced capability for something that a startup will need as they evolve. That's huge. I mean, I'll give you kind of one category, right? One very large category of AI startups right now is productivity, right? How do we as the professionals of the world become more productive with the use of AI, right? Big question, right? A lot of different things that, we as professionals do on a day-to-day basis to be productive. And there are many startups that are building towards that, right? So if you as a professional have some idea for how to make someone more productive, maybe it's reading email faster, maybe it's responding to email, maybe it's creating tasks from emails, maybe it's correlating completed tasks with email chatter. I don't know, whatever. I just named off a couple of things off the top of my head. Go build one of those things, right? So like maybe your personal project is a Chrome extension that patches into the G Suite, and maybe it incorporates some LLM capabilities, and maybe it's cool, right? And then maybe when you go interview with an AI startup, then you bullet it on your resume, and then maybe you could show it off. And maybe they're like, I like what you built there. I like the way you thought about that. They'll get into it. They'll say like, did you think about this? Did you think about that? And you'll say, I did think about this and that, and here's what I did to do that. And so you've now gone from, candidate employer to colleagues, right? Collaborating on a project. And that feels much better. An AI startup will hire that person 100 times more often than they will the person who, whatever, comes through an interview process, or, who they think might, be good at something, but, who knows, right? So that person is 100% more in favor than the alternative. And especially if that startup is Meta or, OpenAI or a large AI startup, they're looking for incredible talent to bring in. They're hiring like crazy. So now check this out for a sec. Let's say you're a FAANG engineer and you're like, I have to get into this world of AI, but I don't know how to do it. Let's say that you have 2 or 3 friends, right? So in this case, your network is a benefit. Let's say you have 2 or 3 friends that are equally good. You could literally just decide to go start an AI company product, start to build something cool, and then you'll pretty immediately then be an AI startup yourself. I mean, getting funding is, there's plenty of capital in the market right now. There are plenty of opportunities to build towards. It's completely greenfield and we're very early. So maybe instead of building that little side feature on the side, maybe you and a couple friends decide to go start an AI startup. And maybe that startup can then become, maybe successful in and of itself. Maybe that startup could be of interest to other AI startups, and maybe there's an opportunity to merge or to be acquired or to grow towards some bigger, greater outcome. A little bit of a tangent on this, but one of the thoughts is that FAANG engineers, as they've evolved over the course of their career, have built a network of great colleagues and counterparts who they've built with together, and they've been successful in building whatever it is that they've built together. My sense is that, again, because the world of FAANG and the world of AI startups are so different, it's not benefiting FAANG talent if the goal of FAANG talent is to adapt themselves more into the world of AI startups. It's not going to benefit them to spend their time networking with other FAANG talent to see what they're doing. That's kind of herd mentality. It's a little bit of, following the masses. The best thing that a FAANG engineer could do if they're interested in immersing themselves is to actually get out of that world, get away from that world, go away from, your FAANG lunch crew and your, FAANG, weekend, I don't know, whatever it is that people do together at that level, and go drive to San Francisco, go get an apartment. I don't know how extreme you want to get, right? I mean, go get an apartment in San Francisco and you have go immerse yourself into the world of AI startups. Go away from the world of FAANG. Go away from what you think is normal. It's not normal. It's only normal there. In AI startups, it's completely different. Okay, so thinking next, right? What are the broader implications to the market, given all of what we've talked about so far? So it begs the thought, and it's actually a bit of a troubling thought, because it makes me think about the markets that are forming and the size of the markets that exist and the impact of that to what's coming, right? So the large majority of great engineering talent currently lives in FAANG today. So all this talk about the bias that AI startups have towards FAANG talent, it's a minority population of AI startups that have towards a majority population of incredible engineering talent, right? So now let's say that this minority AI community is primarily looking to employ people and grow people without taking advantage of this great majority of talent, right? And so this minority community is primarily looking to hire within itself for the most part, or maybe a few people that are able to make it over from the majority of the community. Well, this minority community is growing at an outlandish pace, right? It's being kind of pumped up with mega VC dollars and mega market dollars, right? And it's growing like freaking gangbusters, right? Like insane growth is happening here. But they're limited to the availability of the talent that exists within this community because of the bias that the founders have towards this great majority, right? And so right now, at this exact moment in time today, there are more opportunities, there are more AI startups, there are more job openings within the AI startup community than there is great engineering talent to fill them. And I know that because I'm, myself, our company First 10, our team of recruiters, they are beating their heads against the wall daily trying to find incredible talent for these startups. And so far, these startups think that it's their market, that they're in the choosing position. They get to call all the shots because of whatever reason it is that they believe that. So they believe they can dismiss this majority of talent. They believe that they could continue to hold out for this, very special, type of talent that they want, and they're going to hold out for that. Okay, well, let's see how that goes, right? Because what I think is going to happen is as these startups find themselves experiencing more pressure to grow, maybe it's more pressure to achieve the milestones of the next round, maybe it's more pressure because of competitive dynamics within whatever it is that they're building, they're going to start to feel the pain of not having the engineering talent that they need in order to grow. And so they're going to have to do something about that, right? I mean, these startups have requirements to be in the office, requirements to work all these long hours, requirements to, for their team to feel a certain way, to be into it a certain way, to be, using things in a certain way. At some point, the pressure to grow is going to exceed their want for these criteria, and they're going to have to open themselves up. That's what I believe is going to happen. I believe they're going to have to open themselves up. They're going to start to open up outside of just building in San Francisco. They're going to open up outside of just hiring the specific caliber of talent. They're going to soften up on the grind factor. I think that will start to happen. as long as AI continues to grow and AI continues to be this kind of mega trend that we believe is going to be, they're going to have to do that. I don't know how long that's going to take. I hope that happens soon because that will open up the market for us. It's possible that this caliber, this big mega store of engineering talent will be able to adapt themselves to this world as fast as this world opens itself up to this talent, and then it'll be kind of like one larger market of talent and opportunities. If this AI startup world moves too far away and gets too far evolved while staying in its ecosystem in some shape or form, while this mega base of talent kind of becomes less and less relevant, which is a very huge possibility, then this big mega world is going to start to experience unemployment, loss of opportunity. You're going to start to hear about, you're already hearing right now about, little tangent, you're already hearing right now about, very talented college students who are not able to find, work. And these are people that were very employable, just a few short years ago. I believe that AI has had an effect on that. You're going to start to hear about these very talented people, these people that worked at, in FAANG companies for a decade and can't find work. You're going to start to hear about that more and more and more. FAANG is evolving into AI companies, right? So FAANG is trying to become not FAANG by investing heavily into AI to kind of compete with the leaders of this new AI world. And so what do you think FAANG is doing with the talent that, can't build AI, right? They're going to, quietly and continuously start to reduce this talent. So, I do see this world, the AI startup world, needing to open themselves up a little bit. And if I were kind of, in charge of this world, I would certainly advise that they open themselves up, develop a more meritocratic interview process, lose the bias, hire the people that make it through the process. That's what I would advise. That's what I'm advising our startups to do. If I were this big mega world, I would recommend, and this whole podcast is, recommending that they evolve themselves over as quickly as possible to adapt into this world. If those two things don't happen, then this AI world will hit a wall and not be able to grow because they're not able to bring in the talent fast enough. And this big world will, there's going to be a lot of people on the job market if this big world doesn't evolve fast enough. So that's what I see as the broader implication of the market. And I think the most fascinating part of it to me is that these two worlds have very low awareness of each other. And so that's, part of the purpose of this, podcast and this episode is to just create a little bit of awareness, around what I'm seeing here so that people here could, empower themselves in whatever way they want to empower themselves to, live the life they want and, have the career they want, moving forward, and, not get stuck working for HP when the internet is, where the future turned out to be. And I'm sure there are, many reasons for, why the continued disparity, as I've mentioned, FAANG engineers are very well kept. I mean, if I was a FAANG engineer, if I was, a FAANG engineer that was part of a family and that family has built a lifestyle, around my employment at FAANG, and that includes the compensation that I bring to the table, the wealth that I've helped generate for the family, the, my availability as a, contributor to that family in form of time and other benefits. Like, I mean, this community here has lifestyles built around employment there, and that is very hard to disrupt. It's very hard to kind of look in the mirror and say, like, I need to disrupt it. I'll say something on the personal front. My parents immigrated to America when I was 4 years old, and their stories say that they were very successful as professionals in Lithuania, where we immigrated from. They continuously tell stories about how successful they were professionally, and their vision of the future said that America was where they needed to be, despite the pain, despite the loss that created in their life at that moment in time. And now 40 years, whatever number of years we've been here later, thankfully, and with a lot of great fortune supporting all of that, they're very happy with the decision that they made. But look, you got to make tough decisions sometimes. And so again, it really all comes back to that view of the world, right? What do you believe the future looks like, and do you want to be a part of it or not? I would just say that if anyone out there listening, if you're a FAANG engineer and you're unhappy with what I said, shoot me a note. I do want to hear your perspective. I come from the community. I care a lot about the community. I want to know what is going on in the community beyond what my current perceptions are. So reach out. If you're a FAANG engineer that's excited about immersing yourself into the world of AI, and you're motivated to do that, and you just don't know how, or you need a pathway into that, or you have a pathway into it, but you just want to know more about the very exciting opportunities that are available there. I mean, we work with literally the top startups from the top venture capital firms. So when the top venture capital firms, Andreessen, Sequoia, General Catalyst, et cetera, when those venture capital firms invest in startups, the top startups of that fund call us because we're the team that they then lean on to build their engineering team to achieve whatever success they're trying to achieve. So that's who we are, and that's what we do. And reach out to us. I mean, we're working with some incredible startups with some incredibly visionary founders that are building very exciting products, and there's a pretty exciting set of opportunities that we would be happy to connect you with. If you're an AI startup and you're hearing this and you're feeling like maybe you were original in biasing FAANG talent, and now you're like, really, is everyone doing that? Like, how could I differentiate ourselves from the AI crop? And you want to open yourselves up to this talent, that would actually be very, very smart. And you should then call me. If you're a startup that we work with right now and you want to have this conversation, obviously let's have this conversation. But let's talk. This is an open conversation. The goal of this was to share out to the market, was to bring light onto this situation, which is what I think this is a situation. Let's talk about it. Ping me, comment on this post, reach out. But it was very exciting to share on this topic. It is something that I've been wanting to get off my chest for a while now. So thank you all for listening. I'm glad you're able to stay with us through this point, and excited to keep the conversation going.